Hi, and welcome to the show. Subscribe at kevinmd.com/podcast. Get CME for this episode by clicking on the CME link in the show note. Today, we welcome back Dennis Hursh. He's a physician contract lawyer. His most recent KevinMD article is titled Hospitalsplaining, a lawyer's perspective on condescension in the medical field. Dennis, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
So always love to hear your insights behind the scenes when it comes to contract negotiations. Let's jump right into this one. You talk about the term hospitalsplaining. So what do you mean by that?
Well, it's sort of like mansplaining, but it's what a hospital does because it assumes that the poor, uneducated physician just doesn't realize that we're running a business here. So your foolish inspirations about wanting to sleep at night and not having 50 patient contact hours, all I need to do is explain to you that we're running a business, and then your expected reaction as it gets a palm plant and say, oh, now that I understand that, sure, my foolish personal preferences obviously need to be pushed aside.
Now, what would be a story? You told a story in your article. So lead into it. What's a story of that happening from your experience?
Oh, it's happened many times, but the particular one in the article was we were negotiating a physician's employment agreement, and the contract provided, as many do, that call coverage will be assigned by employer. Well, that's fine, but I just wanted them to agree that it would be equitably allocated among all eligible providers. So maybe you don't really need a physician on call. Maybe, you can have somebody else. I also wanted some reasonable limitations. We were asking for 1 in 5, but we probably would have accepted more, but 1 in 5 is not bad. And then also we did an MGMA analysis, so we knew what the median unpaid hours per week were, and we asked for MGMA median for payment over that. And we were going through the agreement. The hospital representative was friendly enough, but when she got to that position, she felt that she had to explain to me that the hospital is a business, and therefore they couldn't possibly have anything but total blank check on the physician's call schedule. And I started to wonder, what did she think would happen? Was I going to just say, oh, well, then, sure, a foolish physician, 24/7 would be fine. And I guess I would go to my physician and say, well, you may have to do 24/7 under this call, but you've got to understand that the hospital is a business, so they need flexibility. And I just have this sense that she probably wouldn't have said, oh, in that case, sure, I don't need sleep ever. And you get it all the time. I see it when the physician client is on a call with me in particular. The hospital rep will sit there and say, well, Kevin, the first thing I would do then, I think, is say, Mr. Hursh, I prefer Dr. Foe. It's not confrontational, but I just think, I'm a mister, you're a doctor. Let's just get that down. It's not, Kevin and Dennis aren't setting up an appointment to do some brewskis and go bowling. This is a serious negotiation, and you have some rights too. And that's the first thing I see. They start right off with the first name on the physician, and naturally your response is to be, okay, Dennis, we'll do it that way. But I recommend, no, Mr. Hursh, I prefer Dr. Foe. And again, not in a confrontational way at all, just but let's get it there. I'm a mister and you're a doctor, and let's keep it at that status for a bit.
Now, do you find that this type of attitude, is it universal across different types of hospital? What about things like community hospitals versus academics versus big city? So do you find that this attitude is pervasive?
I do, and I think the sense is physicians don't really know about business. So all I have to do is just educate you. I mean, all you're doing is healing clients. I'm spending my days in important meetings and looking at PowerPoints, which after all is what runs a health system. So I think and I really think for a lot of people, that's what they think. We do have to treat patients. That's sort of part of what we do. But the real important stuff is the meetings and the PowerPoints. And therefore you're not participating in that. So you just aren't as important as I am in this process. And you can't really educate them 100% on that, but at least, maintain your status a little bit.
All right. So if you're a physician negotiating against some type of hospital system that comes at you with this type of hospitalsplaining, what options do physicians have?
I think you just have to say, you need to realize that my main concern is quality of care and taking care of the patients. And I am a fabulous doctor, but you know what? If I don't sleep for 4 nights in a row, I'm no longer a fabulous doctor. And I'm concerned about the patient care I'm giving. I usually don't try and say, I'm entitled to a life. You know, you get vacation, you go home at night, you don't ever have call. I just really think you have to put it in terms of what your main goal is, and that is taking care of the patients.
So tell us some next steps of the story. Like, you've been through so many of these negotiations. Give us some success stories where a response like that would sway a hospital.
Oh, it does frequently. You know, I just say, put yourself in a physician's shoes. So what you're saying is there's a possibility that she's going to be 24/7, 365. And they usually come back and say, oh, no, no, we would never do that. To which my response is, well, then let's put it in the contract that if you will never do it, let's put it in the contract. And sometimes they will, like, we can't do 1 in 5, but we can, you know, I can say no more than 2 weekends a month, or at least get some limits there. Their problem is they can always abuse the physicians, and you will almost always just take it. You're going to be worried about your patients. At some point, they need to realize it's going to cost some money, but we may have to bring in a locums. You know, we can't keep having, you know, there are 4 people in a department, one quits, one got pregnant, and one got sick. You can't be expected to do 24/7 until we get around to it. Yeah, it costs us money, might hit the CEO's bonus, but we may need to get a locum tenens in to do some of this call coverage.
So you mentioned earlier that in a lot of cases, the hospital can, make physicians do things otherwise they wouldn't, and physicians would just take it because they have other things to worry about, like care for their patients. What's the long-term impact on physician psyche just due to this constant pervasive attitude?
Well, and I always phrase it in terms of quality of care. I don't care how good a physician you are. If your last 3 weeks have been getting 4 hours of sleep with maybe a call in the middle of the night, and you're doing 40 patient contact hours a week. So you come in the morning, you do some charting, you see patients, maybe grab at 5, the last patient comes in, although probably it was 6 because they kind of overbooked. So, you know, you see patients till 6, and now you can do charting for a little bit, go home, grab something to eat, and chart until you go to bed and start over tomorrow. I don't care about your training. I don't care about how concerned you are for patients. At some point, the quality of care is going to drop. It just has to. Not because you don't care, because you just aren't going to have the cognitive bandwidth that you would if you were leading a more reasonable life. So I usually put it in those terms. You know, to that lady, I think at the hospital, I said, would you like to be treated by her if she's been on call, you know, the last 8 nights? Do you really want to go in and have her treat you? And sometimes they understand that. Like I said, they're going to push back because they know they can get you to just keep working and working and probably not get paid for it, as opposed to paying a locum tenens, and that comes out of money. But at some point, it truly does impact on quality of care.
So a lot of times physicians don't necessarily have an attorney like yourself and may not phrase what they want as diplomatically as you do, right? So tell these physicians, short of hiring an attorney, what are some things not to do or not to say when negotiating some of these when they're talking to the hospital?
Well, like I said, I usually insist on being referred to as doctor. I think that
Okay.
that is something you've earned it in spades. So at least let's not call you by your first name.
Now, does that happen pretty often? Do a lot of hospitals just reflexively call physicians by their first name?
Yeah, yeah, I see that all the time.
And that's
And
a calculated
may not,
tactic?
I think it's a tactic. I think in some cases it might just be legitimately breaking the ice. Hey, call me Dennis. Hey, Kevin, call me Dennis. You know, and maybe some people really to do it to be nice, but like I said, you're a physician. I'd say I prefer Dr. Foe. I think that's first and foremost. is get it right. I think also you can't say things like, I don't care about your business. Your CEO gets a massive, bonus every year. Your CEO makes 8 times what I make. I don't think any of that is useful. I really do think you have to keep circling back to quality of care. And I think you have to say, tell the truth. You are going to get burned out. They're a lot better treating you right than having to recruit a physician, or probably 2 physicians, because people coming out of training are not as willing as some of the middle-aged and older physicians. But it does save them money. But I keep coming back to it's a quality of care issue. If I'm seeing that many patients, I'm not going to be able to do my best. I'm going to do my best till I drop, but at some point I'm not going to be at my peak. And I think you have to say there have to be reasonable limits. Like, maybe I think it's perfectly fine for a physician to have call every other night. But, at some point, what if the other physician gets sick? Now is it 24/7? I just think you have to say there have to be limits here for our patients. There has to be limits. And I think standing on that and keeping in the back of your head that really, ultimately, it is patient care that you're working on. Yeah, it's your quality of life, but if we destroy your quality of life, the patient care is going to go down with it.
Now, you said the term, obviously, hospitalsplaining comes from the term mansplaining. Now, I do want to bring in some gender issues. So let's say male versus female physicians. Do you find that hospitals talk to female physicians differently than they do male physicians?
I think they do sometimes. I just had it was shocking to me. I had a case where the husband and wife, 2 physicians, got job offers at a hospital, and the wife got offered less CME time, and less vacation. Now, most hospitals, all physicians have the same, sometimes it's departmental difference. But yeah, I do think that there's still this sense that, we don't have to be as good to you. And I think women physicians are less likely to assert themselves. I think they're more attuned to kind of giving in, if you will, or being nice and getting along, where I think male physicians have a slight edge in that, in sometimes kind of trying to protect their rights a little bit. But
And do you
yeah,
find that hospitals take advantage of that?
oh, I think they do. I think they take advantage of physicians in general, and I think anything they can do, yeah, they will. And as I said, they're not all bad people. It's probably not a negotiation tactic for everybody, but certainly for a lot of those people, I think it is. Let's be friends, and I'll explain the problem here is that we need flexibility, and somebody has to, this is a win-lose, and obviously we need to win. I think they just have to phrase it in terms of, no, what's going to be best for our clients. And by the way, believe it or not, you do have the right to a life. I mean, you've subsumed it so long worrying about patient care, but believe it or not, you actually have the rights to sleep at nights from time to time too. And you just have to keep that in mind. It's not all about patient care. Every sacrifice you make doesn't necessarily improve patient care. It's just a sacrifice.
Now, a lot of these interactions, a lot of physicians, like me, for instance, I would outsource it to an attorney and let the hospital's attorney and someone like yourself just negotiate on behalf of me. Are there situations where physicians should represent themselves?
Well, I'm biased. I don't think so, just because there are so many different issues that physicians could miss. And I think also somebody that's done a lot of it might be able to do more of a compromise. I've seen this, but it's also easier for me to say, look, my client can't do this. You should get a locum tenens, than it is for you to say, I don't want to take that extra call. You should buy a locum tenens. I think, that's money out of your pocket, your budget, at least. It's going to impact your bonus. So I just think it's easier for me to say, look, this is not fair, than it is for a physician. But I do think if you're comfortable just saying, physicians are really bad about understanding that they have rights and that what they've done is an amazing accomplishment and that there should be some recognition for that. They just tend to be like, all I care about is treating my patients. If you think I need to do that, then I guess I'm not a businessman. Well, no, but you're a person. You have some rights.
And my final question, Dennis, tell us some of your take-home messages from this piece.
I think that you have to, I've sort of been hammering on it, but I think just remember that you got where you got through incredibly hard work. Yes, you're dedicated to your patients. I think if you put it in terms of taking best care of your patients, you will realize that you need breaks on that too. You need to be treated fairly. Ultimately, you may leave this position and go someplace else, which probably won't be as good for your patients, or you'll just sit there and get ground into a shadow of your former self, and that's not good for your patients. So don't do it for you, do it for your patients.
Dennis, once again, thank you so much for coming back on the show and sharing your time and insight.
Sure, it's my pleasure.